Make It Stick, The Science of Successful Learning by Peter C. Brown, Henry L. Roediger III, and Mark A. McDaniel is a book that challenges conventional ideas about how we learn. It takes a deep dive into the science of memory and learning, breaking down evidence-based strategies that can significantly improve the way we retain and apply knowledge. The book aims to provide a more effective approach to studying by focusing on methods that are grounded in cognitive psychology and real-world research. Unlike typical study advice, Make It Stick promotes techniques that go against the grain of popular study habits, showing that the most common methods, like rereading and cramming, are actually counterproductive. The authors begin by explaining why so many of the traditional ways we study are ineffective. Many students believe that rereading their notes or textbooks is a solid way to learn, but research has shown that this method only creates the illusion of mastery. While rereading may make the information feel familiar, it doesn't deeply encode it into long-term memory. The book stresses that real learning requires effort, effortful retrieval and practice, rather than passive review. This notion of desirable difficulty is central to the book's argument. The harder it is to retrieve information, the stronger the memory trace becomes. One of the most powerful strategies the book advocates for is retrieval practice, actively recalling information from memory rather than simply re-exposing yourself to it. This can be done through self-quizzing, flashcards, or even teaching someone else what you've learned. Retrieval practice forces the brain to work harder, strengthening the neural pathways associated with the information. The authors emphasize that the more difficult the retrieval, the stronger the learning becomes. This technique helps move information from short-term to long-term memory, which is critical for both exams and real-world application. Another key strategy in the book is spaced repetition, the idea that reviewing material over increasing intervals of time improves retention. Instead of cramming all at once, spacing out study sessions allows the brain to consolidate information and prevent forgetting. The book suggests using tools like spaced repetition software, e.g., Anki, to schedule reviews of previously learned material. This technique leverages the brain's natural forgetting curve, which shows that we tend to forget most information shortly after learning it unless we review it regularly. Spacing out reviews helps combat this natural tendency, making it easier to retain knowledge for the long haul. The authors also discuss the benefits of interleaving, which involves mixing up different topics or types of problems during study sessions. For example, rather than focusing on one type of math problem for an entire study session, you might alternate between different types of problems. Research has shown that interleaving makes learning more challenging, but it also improves problem-solving skills and helps students generalize concepts across different contexts. While interleaving might feel more difficult and less efficient in the short term, it leads to better long-term retention and understanding. An essential principle in Make It Stick is the idea that learning is more about application than passive review. The book emphasizes that true mastery involves using what you know in a variety of contexts, applying your knowledge in ways that make sense in the real world. Active learning, such as solving problems, discussing concepts with others, or using knowledge in real-world scenarios, reinforces the brain's understanding of the material. The authors argue that simply reading or listening to a lecture isn't enough to cement learning, you must actively engage with the content. The book also challenges the idea that learning styles, the theory that people learn best in different ways, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, are the key to academic success. While there's no doubt that people have preferences, the authors point out that learning styles have been largely debunked as a useful framework for improving learning outcomes. Instead, they argue that effective learning involves the use of a variety of strategies that tap into multiple senses and cognitive processes. For example, instead of sticking to just one mode of learning, it's more effective to combine reading, writing, and speaking about the material. One of the most surprising pieces of advice in the book is that failure is part of the learning process. The authors suggest that mistakes should not be seen as setbacks but as opportunities for growth. When we fail to recall information or make errors, our brains work even harder to correct those mistakes, which ultimately strengthens our memory and understanding. Embracing failure as a learning tool is crucial for developing a deep understanding of the material. In addition to these strategies, Make It Stick also offers advice on how to structure study sessions to maximize learning. The book encourages students to use a combination of techniques, such as active recall, spaced repetition, and interleaving, during each study session. For instance, instead of spending an entire hour on one subject, you could break your study time into smaller blocks, switching between subjects or topics every 20 to 30 minutes. This helps keep the brain engaged and prevents fatigue from focusing on just one thing for too long. This approach is far more effective than studying a single subject for hours without taking breaks. The authors also emphasize the importance of metacognition, the ability to monitor and reflect on your own learning. Being aware of what you know and what you don't know allows you to adjust your study techniques to address gaps in your understanding. This self-awareness helps learners identify which areas need more attention, allowing them to focus their energy on topics they struggle with instead of wasting time on areas they already understand. Make It Stick stresses that learning is not about simply memorizing facts for an exam but about acquiring the skills to use knowledge effectively. The book highlights the importance of applying learning to new situations, the true test of mastery. This means that students should not only prepare for exams but also engage with the material in ways that require them to apply it creatively, such as through projects, problem solving, or teaching others. In their exploration of learning, the authors also dive into the role of motivation. They argue that intrinsic motivation, learning because it's interesting, enjoyable, or personally valuable, is far more powerful than extrinsic motivation, like studying for grades. The book encourages students to find personal meaning in what they are learning and to focus on the long-term benefits of acquiring knowledge. When students are motivated by curiosity or the desire to master a subject, their ability to learn deeply increases. The authors also discuss the impact of sleep on learning. While it may seem like a simple point, the book highlights the importance of rest for memory consolidation. Sleep allows the brain to process and organize information, making it easier to recall what you've learned the next day. The book advises students to avoid cramming late into the night and instead prioritize sleep to enhance memory retention and cognitive function. Finally, Make It Stick advocates for a lifetime learning mindset. The strategies presented in the book aren't just for students, they are valuable for anyone who wants to continue learning throughout their life. The methods of retrieval practice, spaced repetition, interleaving, and others are tools that can be applied in any context, whether you're studying for an exam, learning a new skill, or trying to understand complex concepts in your professional life. The book's overarching message is that learning is an ongoing process, and the most effective learners are those who understand how to learn and continually adapt their methods to improve their outcomes.